Hello, Dental Team listeners. This is Kiera, and today is such a special episode. I am so excited. I am being joined by our incredible clients. I've got Mike and Stephanie Walton. They are running such an incredible practice. They are doing something so different, so unique, and I just wanted them to come on and share just about themselves. I think they're just a great example for so many offices out there. So, Stephanie and Mike, welcome to the show. How are
Doing
you
great, doing
today?
great. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll do better. I'll ask like Mike this, Stephanie that, because I know when there's three of us on here, it can get a little funny, but I'll just have Mike, I'll have you kind of kick this off. You two are incredible. I finally met you for the first time. We've worked together for so long. Tiffany's your main consultant, but it was really dreamy when I got to meet you in June at the Dentist Money Show with Dentist Advisors. So it was super fun. I'm excited to see you guys in person really soon too. But Mike, I'll have you just kick us off. Kind of tell us a little bit about your practice, where you guys are at, kind of the dynamics of what you guys do in your practice. So the audience gets to know Mike and Stephanie
Great.
Walton.
So we are central Kentucky, little south of Louisville. So we're in a town called Bardstown. That's the bourbon capital of the world and the most beautiful small town award that we've received as
In
well.
America.
But
And you also bring the best candies and treats with you. Like they loaded us up when they came and met us. Bourbon Central, it was amazing. It was great. I was so like it was so the caramel, Stephanie, top notch, incredible. That was my favorite. So
well,
thank you.
and,
You're welcome. Majestics.
and Kara, I
Exactly.
have to say, when I first saw you there, of course we've seen each other on the think tank, and I saw you across the room, and I was like, "Hey, there's Kiera," and I was like, "She probably don't know who I am. We've never met before, officially." So,
I did it. Well, because you guys can see Mike, like there's video of him. Mike always, so he mentioned Think Tank, which is our doctor mastermind the first Tuesday of every month that we have. And Mike always wears his Yankees hat. Always. He always has a hat on. So even tonight, I'm like, Mike, what are you doing? I'm not even going to recognize you. And you're right. I was like, where's your
I'm
Yankees
saving it for
hat?
next season.
So
Okay.
that's fair. All right. So you guys are in Kentucky. Tell us kind of the dynamics of your practice. How long have you been practicing? What does this
So I've been
practice look like?
practicing. It'll be 22 years in June. Started out in partnerships, and then went out on my own about 6 years ago. So we are a small office. We are about 5 operatories. It's one doctor, and then right now it's 4 assistants, 2 front desk, and then office manager.
And did you hear there's no hygienist, which is what we're going to lead into of how Mike went from a hygiene practice where he had hygienists to the shortage. It was crunch time. Like he couldn't figure out how to, like it was so hard to hire. And so that's what I'm super excited to talk about. There's literally 4 assistants, no hygienist. Stephanie, tell us about your place. How are you in the practice? How did you get involved? I mean, you must really love Mike to be working there. You're even like scrubbed up over there, girl. Like it's not like you just show up. Tell us
So
kind of
I
how
could
you.
tell that he was kind of unhappy at the last place. And I was like, it doesn't have to be that way. And so we started doing some research about how to open an office because they don't tell you a lot of business in dental school. And I had my own career and we had 3 little kids, but I wanted him to be happy. And we found Ideal Practices and they helped us open the office up, and it was well worth the money. And so that's how I got in there with him, and it was just he and I and an assistant and a hygienist when we started. And now we have 2 wonderful girls at the front desk, and so they do the majority of running the day-to-day stuff, and I get to do the stuff that expands the practice and things like that. So we've come a long way, especially with your all's help.
Oh, amazing. Tiffany loves you. She raves about you. You guys, every time you're on her coaching call schedule, Tiffany is like, I get to talk to the Waltons today. Like, truly, it has been such an incredible relationship. She adores you. And Stephanie, I love that you love Mike so much. And I think that that's just so telling of who you two are as a couple, what your practice is, the vibe you have, of really just coming together as a couple. So now everyone is wondering, and I'm wondering, like, how did you guys even come to this decision to have no hygiene? And how is that even like operating? Like, I need to know this because when you mentioned it on Think Tank, I didn't realize, because I'm not on all of your calls, that you literally had 0 hygienists in your practice, and it's been that way for a little while. So whomever wants to like take this on, I don't know whose brainy idea it was. Like, how did you guys even come to this decision, and how is it going, and
Well,
all the
I
things?
think what kind of led to, after COVID came through, the number of hygienists went way down, and it was constant turnover. It was, they were in such demand, and every office needed them, that it was constantly training and getting them adapted to how we like things done, and then somebody else would make a better offer, and then they would go. And
Mm,
their schedule would be booked out 6 to 8 months, and they'd give you a 2 week notice. And it was
yep.
super stressful, because then we're faced with, well, we're running an ad, there's no way we're going to get somebody to replace you in 2 weeks. Um, and it got to the point where it was like, do we reschedule all these people, or do we squeeze them in? And we were squeezing them in, and it was stress and stress and stress and more stress. And then we got to the point where we're like, we can't do this anymore. Um, and you'd go through the cycle where you'd finally get somebody to bite on your ad, you'd get them in the office, and then, I think about every maybe 3 or 4 months, it was turnover. And we were going through the same thing again. And we're like, how do we get out of this terrible cycle of one, having to train, and two, having to deal with a 6 month schedule that's booked out for a 2 week notice. And and the team was feeling that too. It wasn't just us, because they were picking up a lot of the slack. And so we were like, gosh, if we keep doing this, they're going to get frustrated, we're going to lose the whole team, and then what are we going to do? So
And we have a wonderful team. The SIS assistants are wonderful, and the two at the front desk. Shout out to Haley and Jessica. They are great.
Yeah. Stephanie, how did you feel going through this? Did you agree with Mike? Were you like, let's just cut bait and try and see if we can figure this out? Or were you like, let's not do that? I mean, the traditional model is we need hygienists. We know we need 2 hygienists for every doctor. Like, Stephanie, what was your take? Because I think if I was in your shoes, I have a reasonable level of risk, but I'm also very risk adverse. And so, how is it for you? I mean, this is your livelihood. You two are a couple in this. You went away, you've given up your career, you're in this now. Stephanie, how is that for you making this decision to go hygiene-less in a practice?
So I think you end up with kind of your opposite when you marry, And so I'm the kind of like, let's don't miss the boat, and he's like the let's not rock the boat kind of person.
Okay.
So this was my idea.
I
Like
love it.
I
I
was
knew
like,
it was. I didn't even know, but I was like, I
But
bet it was
that, well,
Stephanie.
that's
Just knowing you
that,
two, I'm like,
that's
I
what I
bet
was
it
going to say.
is.
Is I think you're directing this question to the wrong person.
right. So I'm always like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And they're like, you're wearing us out. And so yeah, I try not to change too many things, but at the same time, I'm like, if anybody has any ideas, that's the great thing about small business and not having anybody to be your boss. You could try it, and if it doesn't work, you try something else.
Exactly. Stephanie, what was your career prior to joining the dental practice? Where did you come from? What were you doing? I know you had 3 littles. So what did you do beforehand?
I was an occupational therapist. So I did, worked at the hospital, post, rehab for strokes and hip replacements and things like that. So it comes in handy telling him about ergonomics and protecting that, because I had patients that were former dentists. And so I can help the assistants and hygienists. We had one when we switched to this model, an assistant that was having some ulnar nerve impingement because she was doing so much of the same task. And so I was teaching her about ulnar nerve glides and, ergonomics and stuff. So yeah, that's what I did before.
I love it. And so what's fun about that is I I wanted to highlight that because I think so often having a fresh perspective like you have, Stephanie, of we're running a ragged race. And Mike, I think we're in dental, we're so ingrained in dental that that's why it's really fun to have consultants or have other business people or have someone else's perspective. So Stephanie, how did you pitch this and what was your reasoning? Like, walk me through, how did you even say like we're getting rid of the hygienist? Like, forget it, Mike, we're gonna go for this. Walk me through kind of your thought process of even how you thought to do this, and then I'm excited to hear, Mike, how you guys actually ended up doing it.
I don't even know if I'm on a lot of different forums and a lot of just to learn, podcast, consume, and I don't know if somebody else was doing it or if it was like a hybrid from like accelerated hygiene, or if it was just the fact that can we entertain the idea of not having that position in the office and then boost the wonderful people that we do have, could we make that work? Because I'm kind of like, out of the box, well, have we ever tried this before? And I watch a lot of Simon Sinek. You can have anything you
Yep,
want as
yep.
long as you don't hurt anybody else in the process.
Mm-hmm. All right,
So
so Mike, she pitches this to you. Let's get rid of hygiene. I can only imagine a dentist's worst nightmare is, hey, you want to start scaling teeth again? So I'm just dying to know, Mike, how did this pitch go? I'm imagining Shark Tank. Stephanie's got the whiteboards, we could do this. We can think outside the box. And Mike, you're like, but this means I have to scale again. So Mike, how did this go for you? Give me some sense, because I guarantee you dentists listening are like, I'm hanging up. I'm not even going to listen. How did this dentist even say yes to wanting to do hygiene again? Because I imagine that that's how it's rolling in your
Well,
practice right now.
we've been married. We've been married for
Oh,
it'll be 24 years this year, and together for 31 years. And I learned a
well,
long time
congrats.
ago that um, I say you're right, and it doesn't take a lot of fight anymore to kind of get me to go along, because she does a lot of that research and a lot of that background. I've always been more the technician, and she kind of says, "Hey, if you think about this, you think about that," and she's got a good way of presenting it to where it makes all the sense in the world. Um, I think there was some logistical things that were kind of popping in both of our heads of how does this work. But also from her background as an occupational therapist, she is incredibly structured and organized. And so she took a lot of that on and kind of said, "Hey, what if we do this? What if we do that?" And I was like, I couldn't find anything to argue with other than, in dental school, I remember graduating dental school thinking, well, that's the last prophy I'm ever going to do. And, I kind of dreaded it going into it at first, but, it's not bad. Right now I'm still like, I'm not going to do any scaling and root planing. And I say we're hygienist-less. We do have one of our old hygienists that does come in and do our scaling and root planning for us, and we set her up every couple of weeks with a full schedule, and she's fantastic, and she comes in and takes care of us with that. But we do all the para maintenance and all the profies, and um, it took a little time to kind of get into that groove, because we were trying to figure out, do we do it all hygiene in one day and all restorative in another day, or do we mix and match it? And we decided and figured out that it was more efficient and profitable to kind of break it up and do it day by day. So we've got one day, or I guess if we work 4 days a week, so in a 2 week span, we got 8 work days, and we'll do um, several days of just hygiene and several days
3.
of restorative, and we kind of alternate those doors. So
So you do
yeah,
a full day.
so
A
like
full
today
day?
was a full day of
Go
hygiene
ahead.
for me. So we had 3 operatories of hygiene just back to back to back, and ran all day like that.
Amazing. And so you basically are doing triple accelerated hygiene. You've got your assistants who are over a column, and then you basically just go in, scale. You can do the exam at the same
Yeah.
time, so that is convenient. Is that how it operates? Now I'm dying to know the logistics. All right, so we've got 3 columns of hygiene that we're doing, which is why we have our assistants. How does that work for you, Mike? Are you just scaling? They're polishing, they're taking the X-rays, and do you stagger your schedule so that way you're able to get to all of them, or are they blocked on the hour just like a regular
So
hygiene
good
schedule?
question. We do not stagger them. We kind of have them on hour appointments. Um, I'm trying to think of what's the best way to start here. The
The front desk does a really good job of mixing patients that need
yes,
x-rays with patients that don't need x-rays. So that's
Amazing.
kind of the substitute for
yeah.
staggering. And the
Because
DAs do too,
so yeah,
looking forward.
we'll have somebody that needs X-rays and 2 that don't, or and so what happens is I'll start out and I'll just scale as soon as they get the first 3 patients back, I'll scale one. The other assistant is getting all the data and prophy. and then the other one's doing the X-rays, and so they're a little bit behind that second one, and then it kind of staggers when I need to go into each room, if that makes sense. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's that's what it is. It's just kind of a bounce room to room to room, and then they got time to turn over, and then we bounce room to room to room again.
And we're real
Amazing.
fortunate in the state of Kentucky because the dental assistants can do everything but the scaling. With the certification, they can do the coronal polishing. We trained them to do perio charting. We trained them to do everything but the scaling and, of course, the diagnosing. And that has worked out tremendously well. As far as that, but they can do everything. They can do sealants, they can do fluoride, they can do polishing. They can establish rapport, and so they fill that time with what we call "How's your mama" experience. Because that's what it is when people come in. We say, how are you doing? How's your mom?
Mhm.
And we know them that good.
Right. And in the state of Kentucky, because I don't know all the laws, are they, when we go to the restorative side, can they act as like FDAs and others, or can they do fillings? Can they do crown preps? Like you obviously prep. Does that work for you? Because I'm just trying to figure out logistics on restorative day, because I'm guessing you've got quite a few columns of restorative. Is that how
Right,
your
right,
assistants work?
exactly. So yeah, anything that is reversible, they can do. Um, and so they are all extended duty certified,
Mm.
and that's kind of how we run. Whatever they can do, they are allowed to do. They do, and they do it well. Um, that was one of the
Right.
And the great part about that is they understand the restorative part when it comes to treatment planning during a hygiene appointment. And the
Oh,
hygienist always struggled with that. They knew hygiene inside and out, everything about that. But when it came to treatment planning, the process of extractions and dentures or whatever it may be, they didn't understand that. And these dental
right.
assistants understand it forwards and backwards. And so they're his right hand in the restorative. And so when it comes to treatment planning, they already know how he likes it, the procedure process, the
right.
steps of it. And so even the treatment planning is so much better because they understand the restorative part where the hygienist really didn't.
That's a good point, Stephanie. And I hadn't actually not thought about that. Like you're right. They're probably teeing up treatment so much better. They don't even need to know
Yes.
what would doctor do, because they know they've assisted you. And as an assistant, I'm
Yes.
like, I know what my doctor is going to do. You're so intimate with your doctor that you really do know. That's actually like a plug for people that want to go fully hygiene less, like you guys have. If you're looking at assisted hygiene, that assistant really can tee up a lot of treatment if they've worked with a doctor and they are an experienced assistant. That's a really big pro that I had not thought of. So, Mike, how is it for you as a dentist? Like scaling all day long? Like, are you okay with it? Do you like the piezo? Like, walk me through, how many months has this been since you guys have
It was
gotten this
probably
model?
May when we started doing this, and
Okay, so we're like nine
yeah,
months, 10 months in.
yeah, and so it was tough at first because it's a whole different positioning. It was I would end the day and could hardly stand up straight, and um, it's taken a long time to try to figure out where proper position was, because it had been so long since I'd done it. But
Right.
probably the last month or two, month and a half, it's gotten to where I found that groove and I get in. So it's not, it's not that strenuous on me as it was in the beginning. I think that was one of the things early on that we thought, oh gosh, we might not be able to pull this off because it was so hard, physically.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we just kept working, and of course, Stephanie's got a lot of good input on how to do things with the ergonomics, and if I was complaining about something bothering me, she's like, try this, try that, and so that all kind of panned out, and I think with the assistants learning new skills and taking on more responsibility, they really like they've run with it. It's pushing their level of importance up in the office, and they appreciate that, and I appreciate that, and it kind of makes their job more fulfilling, and it allows us to get through the day, and we tend to run on time a lot better than we did before. And
I
it's,
bet.
I think one of the nicest things is that there's no interruption. When you had a hygienist, it was no matter
Mhm.
what you were doing, it was constantly, I'm ready for a check. And you'd have to stop and get up and go check. And then you come back. And then it seemed like as soon as you sat down and put your gloves on and got your fingers wet, it was time for a check again. And so we don't have that
Right.
anymore. And so that's like a huge stress reliever. And because you're not having to get up and down all the time, it allows you to schedule more efficiently. So,
I was gonna
it,
say, I bet on restorative, you can actually do a lot more restorative faster and more efficiently and actually get more done than you were prior. Have you noticed that,
it
Tiffany?
has because, and, just kind of jumping a little bit into probably what you would ask down the road, but, I think our overall production has gone down a little bit just because
Yep, you
yeah.
knew you know me. Of course I want
So
to know
like
like what are the
it's
numbers?
gone down a little bit just because we can't see as many patients anymore. So we had to scale back just a
Mhm.
little bit to make it work with the amount of appointments that we had possibly available. But with how efficient we are now with the scheduling, the profitability has gone up. And I had those numbers, and I did that on a presentation with another mastermind group, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I don't know. Do you remember what those were, Stephanie, or no?
Not exactly, but it the our
Yeah.
we took home more is what it came down to, and our team did. Like we were able to
Mhm.
give raises, we were able to share that because we didn't have that hygiene overhead. But another good point is that we had to set aside specific time in the schedule, make appointments, make events to formalize their training with how to do
Mhm.
perio charting to his standards, how to do these skills to his standards. It's like everything else, you had to put it on the schedule so that everybody could check it off. And so it's kind of like a loss in the beginning, but it pays off in spades down the road because they feel confident about it. And it's like they're their patients, and they're, in charge of it and responsible for it. And they're very proud of how many skills they have now. And, so they were kind of hesitant at first because it's just like it's unknown and, I don't know if I can do that. And but by checking off and feeling confident, it's made the biggest difference.
That's amazing. And as an assistant myself, and I know Tiff's an assistant as well, it actually is really fun to think of elevating assistants to give them more skill sets, things that they can do, giving them that autonomy. It actually kind of comes down to an ortho assistant model where they're able to do so much more while still being able to have the general side where we get to do all the fun, like I call it the blood and guts of dentistry. Like ortho is so clean, which hygiene is so clean with air quotes around it. And so I think you've actually blended for assistants because I was always envious of the ortho assistants. I'm like, gosh, they get to do so much. They get to do so much more than I do. So I think like really incredible work. Agreed. I think I'd be nervous to take this on. I'm like, well, if we're doing hygiene, but I think also way to give them a huge elevation piece. So, and it's also fun to hear about your numbers. I would imagine without that hygiene expense that you will be more profitable. So you run when you run restorative days, you run 3 columns of restorative on that, or how many columns of restorative do you run that day?
Three, and then um,
Okay.
we've got a fourth room that if we have kids, we can squeeze in a fourth. Yeah,
Things that are
yeah.
assistant only.
Sure. Okay. So we're running 3 columns of hygiene on one day, then 3 columns of restorative, which you can. Now you can have them shorter appointments. You can get in and out. You can utilize your assistants more. So they're having fun too. They have a hygiene day, then a restorative day, hygiene. So it breaks up their model too. They're not running all the time. But I'm curious. I always think like long term, like, do you guys want to go back to hygiene and or would you hire another dentist? So then, Mike, you and another dentist are doing this hygiene model. You can see because I'm thinking, well, shoot, you're seeing 3 columns of hygiene. You're probably only seeing two before, but we're seeing 3 columns, but just not consistently across the time. So, what are kind of your long term pieces? You took home more. You got a little drop in production. I'm super curious, like, to see a full year of this. Like, will the numbers come back up now that everybody's trained? We kind of have this whole model, but what's kind of in the long term scope? Are you thinking of another doctor or maybe looking for hygienists or like, no, we're going to just ride this out for a little while?
I think the plan is going to be to kind of ride it out. We kind of talked about, if you brought on another doctor, are they gonna buy into doing hygiene like we have, and I think that's a hard pill to swallow until you've had the heartache and the upset that we had with maintaining a hygienist.
Right.
Um, so I think it's going to be a kind of ride it out and see how things go. I think, you know, is there ever a time where you'd have a hygienist back in? Absolutely. I think there's some things that would have to change market wise and availability wise, and knowing that security, because that I think that's one of the biggest things that the patients have noticed is they're getting consistency with the same person, and
They
we're
love seeing the doctor. There's
yeah.
no pushback to not having a hygienist. They are very excited to have more time with
And
him.
I think we're getting into that cycle where from when we started, we're seeing the 6 month, group coming back through, and they're like, we had so much turnover that every time they came, it was a different person, and now there's like, oh, I get to see the same person again, and so, that's a good feeling for them too, and I think that would be the limitation on a hygienist is one knowing, you know if I could guarantee that they would be here long term, absolutely. Or if the market were to change to where there was a surplus that you felt like that was going to drive them to stay for a long time, then I think that's where the change would come in that perspective.
Wow. I'm so intrigued, and I'm sure listeners are just beyond intrigued by this. It is fun to know about the numbers. It's fun to hear. And I remember Mike in our mastermind that we were chatting, you literally said like, I wouldn't go back. You were like, it was the best thing we ever did. And I'm like, we're getting you on the podcast because it's such a anomaly. I think it shows your guys' grit. It shows your determination. I love, Stephanie, you pushing to think outside the box. So I'm just curious, like with this, what would you say are like the best benefits? I mean, Mike, I've heard a few come through from you. Benefits, and Stephanie, you just said them. So I'll list a few and see if there's anything I might have missed. Was Stephanie, I love that you said they get consistency with the doctor. Like they're seeing Mike, they're seeing him more often. I think Mike, for you, not having to get the hey, we're ready for a check, we're ready for a check. Like you feel like you can just get in and almost like do your thing every single day. I also heard the assistants have been able to rise up. You've been able to probably pay them more than they would normally make, which also then retains your assistants and makes them more sticky to you, I would presume. But any other things that you've seen that have been positives of moving to a hygiene-less model?
Well, I want to speak to that because the team is so much more unified because and they're candid with
Interesting.
us because everybody feels like they're on the same level. Like there's no hierarchy in the office. The back office people are candid with the front office people and telling us how we can schedule more efficiently. The front office people are telling the back office people you need to document this so we're getting paid quicker. There it's like the barriers have been broken down. Like everybody's on the same level, and that has unified the team, I think, like we didn't anticipate.
Sure. I wouldn't have thought that either. I could see like some divides, but I also think when you go through quote unquote hard times, which you were losing hygienists consistently. We're having to pick up the slack. That's stressful. We've got all these columns of hygiene. It does bring people together when they go through that. And I bet this team is pretty rock solid, sticky with you for quite some time going through this, which I think is awesome. Mike, anything you've seen that you want to add to that? Or Stephanie, either one.
um I think those are the big highlights. It seemed like there was always tension before, and we don't have that. Like Stephanie said, it's that unifying of the team, and it's because everybody's pulling a very important role in the office and making it work, and everybody's establishing that relationship, and it's kind of like not your right hand talking to your left hand. It's like having one big hand, and it's all just working together.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I did look up while you all were talking a minute ago. I pulled up the other presentation I had with the profitability.
Oh yeah.
So
I want to know these. I'm
so
not,
this
I
was when
love
we
the
were 4
numbers.
months into it. Our payroll overhead was falling between 15 and 18%, because we lost the
Wow.
the payroll for the hygienist. Our average overhead for that 4 months was 48%. And then our overall production was steady, but our profitability was up 27% over the same 4 month period the year before. So,
That's insane. And to hear payroll numbers coming in at 15, 18%, when right now people are struggling to keep it at 30, 34, 35%. Everything's rising up. And so that had to just feel good to,
and
I mean, I don't know. Mike, I saw I saw you for many months, and I just remember the stress. Like so many think tanks, you're like, oh, can't find a hygienist. We just lost a hygienist, and I feel like the stress and the angst that you were going through. And watching you two tonight, you just seem like, yep, we have a plan. And I'm wondering if there's now, do you feel more certainty? And I think Stephanie, I'll come to you on this one. Is there more certainty that like your success, your future's in your hands, or does it feel like there's more stress because now it's all on you? Like, has it freed you up? Has it created more stress? What do you feel, Stephanie, from your perspective?
I don't think making this change has created more stress at all. Um, you know, it. I enjoy this. I worry about it being physically hard on him, but I enjoy the team being a lot happier when they come in and them feeling fulfilled. And I think that decreases our worry. And I think a lot of people that own practices are worried that people, if you rub them the wrong way, they're just going to leave. If you ask
Right.
them to do one more thing, they're just going to leave. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a constant stress for us, and I don't feel like that with this group. I don't know if it's going to be a long-term option because I worry about the wear and tear on him, but they seem to really care about each other. So it's working for now, and we just need to watch trends and see if it's going to continue to work or if we need to pivot.
Sure. I love that. Mike, what about for
um,
you?
I think the excess of stress is kind of what pushed us to make the change. And I would say that definitely since we've made it, just with the demeanor in the whole office and the lack of the headache of constantly replacing somebody is, I mean, that's taken mountains of stress away. And I think that was the most valuable thing that we've done is relieving that stress, because it was taking its toll. It was pretty hard on us.
I believe it. How does it feel, Mike, for you being like Stephanie was saying, you are now the hygienist and the dentist. And so like those two hands, I always told my dentist every night, I'd be like, hey, keep those hands good because that's my job. I tell them like when you walk through the crosswalk, put your hands up. So in case like the car hits you, like they just take your body out, but your hands are still good. But truly I was like, you are my job. Mike, how is that for you? Like you are the hygienist, you are the dentist. It is you in that practice. Is there stress on you feeling that? Or is like, well, I'm going to do what I can do. And hey, worst case scenario, I'm going to find someone to replace me if I have to.
So I
What
think
does
that
that
was
feel?
something that was really eating at him. And then we sat down with Matt at the dental advisors. And, once we got the disability insurance in place and everything was, we have a contingency plan. So if the worst were to
Nice.
happen, for whatever, that the team is provided for a little while, and then we have, and I think that's, and Mike, you need to speak to this. I think that made him feel a whole lot better because there was a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, is just having those contingency plans if something bad were to happen.
Right. And
For
like
sure.
what she was saying, you kind of carry that load of everything is dependent on me and what happens. And you know I think that's just seeing the numbers. Once you see the numbers, just like anything, that it relieves you a little bit, and you know that, hey, you don't want the worst to happen, but if it does, things are provided for. As far as hands and things go, I see lots of people that go through years of work, and I think if anything, my hands are good. It was my back that I was worried about. But I think just repositioning and kind of paying attention and listening to your body too. That I've had hygienists that only hand scale, and I'm like, use the ultrasonic. That's what it's there for. It's meant to save your hands. And so I do most everything ultrasonic, and if I can't get to it with ultrasonic, I hand scale, and like I said, it's not, you know, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that wear and tear, because it's so minimal. Um, but it's one of those things that, at first I thought I wasn't going to like, but I've always been the talker with the patients too, and it's like now I've got a little extra time to talk. So
I
I think
bet.
it's been a good change.
It's such a fun thing, and I'm so grateful you guys were willing to come on and share. And definitely love you guys as clients. Love seeing your success. Love seeing the change. I love just you sharing your experience. It's really fun. So just super appreciative of you coming on. And of course, my mind's thinking like, well, if you guys are going to stay this model, you might as well go fee for service. Like you've already got a huge tether to these patients. Make more. You can do less. Bring on another doctor that could swap you out. Hygienist. So really fun paths for you in the future. I'm just curious as we wrap up tonight, like so appreciative. Any last thoughts, maybe things I didn't ask that I should have asked, or things that you're like, Kiera, this would be really helpful for a practice thinking about doing this. Stephanie, I'll pivot to you first, and then we'll wrap with you, Mike. Anything I maybe didn't ask or something you want to add as we wrap up tonight?
So it probably helps us tremendously that we do not have contracts with any insurance. So we're not straight up fee for service, but we do get full fee now.
Yes.
So that probably makes it a little bit more doable for us, but it also adds a little bit of stress on our wonderful front desk people because they're having those hard conversations. And
Yeah.
then another barrier was there are only so many hygiene spots that we could fit in a calendar year. So we could literally, with only one doctor, see probably 2,300 hygiene appointments in a year. And so we had probably 4,000 active patients when this was going
Wow.
on. And so we were like,
Big
what do
cut.
we do? And Mike's had, a little bit of health issues. And so we wanted to decrease the stress. We're at a point where we could do that. And so we had to like downsize some patients. And I bet every office would like to downsize some patients. And we just started with the people that gave him the highest stress or didn't value keeping their appointments. And we enacted a super strict cancellation policy, which is a little bit of a hard conversation for the front desk, but it's a little work up front that pays off in spades. And it's kind of like people are coming to the understanding that it's more of a specialist type office. If they truly value coming to see Dr. Walton, which they love seeing him, because of that relationship, they're going to keep that appointment. They're going to book it far out. And so we got to kind of let some people go that didn't respect, his time, or we didn't enjoy seeing necessarily. So, I think that was, something that was hard that we didn't anticipate, but I think it's kind of a good thing in the long run.
Yeah, no, and you're right. That is a big downsize, but it's also an upgrade in life and fulfillment and happiness. And I tell a lot of offices like the best gift. There was one dentist I worked with, and they said every year for the holidays, the gift they gave was like the employees could go through the list of patients of which ones give us the heartache, which ones are the ones that like we just groan, and we're going to dismiss them, and we're going to actually like fire them as patients in a very respectful way, send them to another office, but elevating that, like it's crazy how much that can do for your morale. I only work with clients that I like. Like that's part of dental A team's model. Like, yes, I understand that there'll be some tricky ones, but we like to work with our clients. We love, and I love when my day is full of all the clients that I love working with. And I know Tip feels the same way. So I can only imagine giving yourself that life upgrade was incredible. So thanks for that. That's also a good, I think, key point, because you're right. Limited space. What do we do with that? And based on where you are in your career path, it makes sense to possibly downsize. Who knows how much longer we want to practice? But I think if you're really early on in your practice, that'd be something to really consider, because downsizing a practice, and then if you ever bring in doctors, you're going to need to re-increase that. I think that's something that was a wise decision based on where you are. So, Mike, anything for you wanted to add or
Well, I think the only
highlight?
thing that Stephanie didn't mention, when we made that change, one of the other difficult things was, you had 6 months of hygiene people that you had to reschedule to the days that you were seeing hygiene. And so that was a tremendous load on the front desk as well, to move all of those patients and get them lined up on the days that we deemed as the hygiene days. But, that was for 6 months, and we've made it through that. And that's a huge load off of their shoulders now. And Yeah,
Shout
yeah.
out to Jessica.
Right. And it is something where I think you guys have really painted a picture of it's short-term pain for long-term gain. Like, yes, those are annoying. Yes, those things are they're just obnoxious. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to do the short-term pain. So they stay in long-term pain thinking that that's easier. And so it is annoying as a front office to move patients, but it's what's the benefit going to be? Like, we have a pediatric practice that I worked with, and we got the doctor where she has we work just ops in the morning and then we do all hygiene in the afternoon. So it's a similar, it's just split days for them. And she's so much happier, but they had to move. I mean, we're talking pediatric. That's just like so many little appointments in a day. But that team, they hunkered in just like your team did. And it's amazing at how happy this team has become, how much happier the patients are, how much more efficient they are with their time. So mad
And
kudos to
had
you and your
those
team.
hard conversations
Right.
about that.
Yes.
And that's what people, a lot of people don't want to do, is have those hard conversations to have the long-term benefit. And that's what we've experienced, is they just, even the doctors, they just avoid those hard conversations, tell them what they want to hear and just get out.
Yeah. And then here we are. So I'm so proud of you. I know Tiff has been proud of you. I know she's been a huge instrumental part to help you guys navigate through this and just work with it. And just like really, I think the tenacity, the grit, and the love that you have is just so incredible. So thank you. I know it's late for you. You guys are East Coast, I'm West Coast. So thank you for taking time. You had a full day today. But really, just thanks for sharing your experience. And I think for offices listening, I think outside the box like Stephanie and like Mike, and go through those the pains, if you will. It's the pain of holding on and like having that constant replacement, or it's the pain of let's figure this out so we're not there. And I'm so excited. Like, thanks for letting me, eat my popcorn on the sideline of your life and watch to see how this unfolds. I think you have so many fun things to see. How does this year shake out? Is this something we want to do long term? Or is it something where no, maybe we might go back to a more traditional, maybe we do a hybrid of what we've done and what we used to do. I'm really excited to see the future, and I think it's bright. And hallelujah, you're not in the hygiene debacle anymore for now. We'll see what changes in the future, but mad appreciation to both of you.
Thank you for
Yes,
letting us share
thanks.
our story.
Of course. All right, you guys, that wraps it up. And for all of you listening, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Dental Team Podcast.